The development of the DK28 engine was based on 5 concepts: increased reliability and durability, reduced maintenance costs, environmental protection, increased thermal efficiency, and compactness. This diagram shows the extra margin of mechanical strength of the DK28. "20 years of nitrous oxide emission research has given us an engine that's environmentally friendly, clearing IMO Level 1 standards with no adverse effects on its fuel consumption rate." The dismantling and assembly time has also been substantially reduced as compared to previous engines. In accordance with ISO standards, the cylinders are numbered from number 1 on the flywheel side, and the main bearings are numbered in the same way. This video explains the proper disassembly and maintenance procedures for the DK28 engine, containing sections for the cylinder head, the piston and connecting rod, and the main bearing shell. First, the cylinder head. The tools needed for dismantling should be prepared and laid out as shown. Before beginning the dismantling process, turn the governor handle to the stop position and close the valves on the air tank main valves. Drain the jacket cooling water from the engine. After that, open the indicator valves on all of the cylinders. Remove the injection pump and exhaust manifold covers. Now remove the cylinder head cover. Next, remove the injection block leak oil pipe, the rocker arm oil inlet pipe, the fuel nozzle holder leak oil pipe, and the starting air pilot pipe. In engines that use heavy fuel oil, remove also the nozzle cooling inlet and outlet pipes. Then remove the injection block. After removing the fuel oil injection block, place a cover over the injection pump so that no foreign objects enter the nozzle. Remove the nozzle holder's inlet connector and guide. Loosen the bolt for the main cooling water pipe. Loosen the rocker arm nut and remove the rocker arms. Now remove the push rods and the rocker arm T-yokes. Remove the nozzle holder clamp. Pull out the nozzle holder with the special tool. Remove the tightening bolt for the exhaust pipe. Do not remove the block for the exhaust gas outlet unless necessary. Attach the hydraulic jack to the cylinder head bolt. So that the jack stand does not bear on the neighboring cylinder head, align all recessed part faces outward. Screw the hydraulic jack in completely until it sits on the jack cylinder with no gaps. Then back it off 1 full turn. Bring the hydraulic jack up to specified pressure. Loosen the tightening nuts. Next, turn the pump's relief valve, gradually releasing the hydraulic pressure. Then remove the hydraulic jack and loosen the nut. Attach the cylinder head lifting tool and remove the cylinder head. After pulling out the cylinder head, put covers over the cylinder liner and intake duct so that no foreign objects get into the engine. Also, when setting the cylinder head down, take care not to damage the combustion surface. Remove the indicator valve. Attach the special removing tool. Remove the valve cotters of the intake and exhaust valves. Remove the valve rotators and springs. After marking the position on the valve face, remove the intake and exhaust valves. Next, cylinder head maintenance. Before beginning maintenance, check for carbon buildup and clean the combustion surface with care. Do not use a burner to remove carbon. The combustion surface is exposed to high heat and high pressure, so perform a color check and examine the surface carefully for cracks. Measure the stem diameter of the intake and exhaust valves with a micrometer. Measure the valve seat height with vernier calipers. Remove the O-rings from the upper part of the intake and exhaust valve guides and clean the inside. Then measure the guides. Record these measurements. Next, the lapping of the intake and exhaust valves. Apply oil to the stem and apply lapping compound to the valve seat. Reapply lapping compound from coarse to fine and lap in the valve by tapping it against the seat while rotating it. When the grinding is complete, wipe off the lapping compound completely, apply oil and repeat the process with oil. Finally, check the valve seat contact with bearing blue. Assemble the intake and exhaust valves in the reverse order of their dismantling. Before assembling the valves, fit new O-rings into the valve guides and apply grease. There are various identification marks stamped on the intake and exhaust valves according to their use. Apply oil to the intake and exhaust valve stems and assemble them while carefully checking their markings. Inspect the valve spring seats to make sure there are no burrs or scratches. Inspect the valve spring surfaces for corrosion or dent marks. And check to see that the valve rotators move smoothly. After assembly, check that the cotters are completely in place. Next, the disassembly of the starting air valve. Start by removing the starting valve cover and pull out the starting air valve assembly. First, remove the cotter pin and nut. Using the starting valve disassembly adapter, disassemble the starting valve body in sequence. Clean each part. Inspect the starting valve, piston, and spring for corrosion or scratches. Lapping of the starting valve and piston should be done with both inserted into the starting valve body. Now begin the assembly process. Apply grease to the piston and reinsert it into the starting air valve body. With the start valve still in the disassembly adapter, screw it in and tighten to the specified torque. After tightening the nut, insert the cotter pin and bend it completely. Replace the O-ring and gasket and apply grease before inserting it into the cylinder head. Then tighten the cover bolts evenly to the specified torque. The next step is the disassembly of the fuel injection nozzle. But before disassembly, measure and record the injection pressure. When removing the nozzle from the nozzle holder, first loosen the pressure adjusting screw. Be careful. If the fuel nozzle is loosened or tightened while the pressure adjusting screw is tightened, the nozzle needle valve may be damaged. Clean and inspect each part of the fuel oil injection nozzle. Inspect the injection holes of the nozzle tip and the movement of the needle valve. To reassemble, first attach the spacer to the nozzle holder body, then insert the nozzle tip. Carefully check the correct position of the dowel pins. Spray the holder screw and retaining nut with Molykote 1000 and tighten it to the specified torque. After tightening the adjusting screw to the specified torque, tighten the lock nut. Check the spray pattern by injecting it 2 or 3 times at the specified pressure. Do not put your hands near the nozzle opening during the injection test. Finally, check that there is no oil leakage from the nozzle tip. Carefully clean sealing portions for the cylinder head, the cylinder liner, and the engine frame. Replace the seal for the intake manifold bin, the push rod O-rings, the cooling water intake O-rings, and the starting air block connector O-rings. Fit new cylinder head gaskets. Do not apply a coating like Molykote 1000 to the gasket faces. Check that there are no foreign objects inside the cylinder, then install the cylinder head. Insert a new gasket for the exhaust manifold. Spray Molykote 1000 over the bolt threads and tighten the bolts temporarily by hand. Be careful not to confuse the top and bottom mounting nuts. Attach the hydraulic jack the same way it was done during the dismantling process and raise the pressure to the specified level. Tighten the nut by tapping the tool jack handle with a hammer. Tighten the exhaust manifold pipe. Next, when assembling the nozzle holder, check that there are no remnants of the old gasket on the nozzle aperture. Grease the nozzle holder tip and install a new gasket. Change the nozzle holder O-rings. the nozzle holder guide pin with the cylinder head guide groove. Then insert the holder. After replacing the inlet connector guide O-ring with a new one, insert it into the cylinder head. Check the seat of the inlet connector and screw it into the cylinder head. Tighten the nozzle holder nut to the specified torque. Then tighten the inlet connector to the specified torque. Fit new O-rings on the injection pump upper joint and the cylinder head side of the injection block. Make sure that there are no foreign objects or scratches on the surface of the injection block joint or seat, and tighten the connecting bolts evenly to the specified torque. Next, rotate the piston to the combustion top dead center by turning the flywheel. Insert the push rods and valve T-yokes. Use a dial gauge to check the movement of the valve T-yokes. Tighten the screw slowly until the needle starts to move, then tighten the lock nut securely. Next, install the rocker arm assembly. After adjusting the tappet clearance, securely tighten the lock nuts. Replace the O-ring and attach the main cooling water outlet pipe. Then attach the various pipes around the cylinder head. Next, the valve operating device. The swing arm construction has been adopted as a way to transmit cam movement to the push rods. Take out the intake and exhaust valve push rods. Remove the swing arm retaining bolt and the swing arms. Both intake and exhaust can be removed. The swing arms for intake and exhaust are fully interchangeable. If movement of the roller and the shaft is too loose, replace the swing arm assembly. Assemble the shafts and swing arms, taking care that the lubricating oil passages are aligned properly. The swing arm retaining bolt is a special bolt which also acts as a lubrication joint. Tighten the swing arm retaining bolts to the specified torque. Next, fuel oil injection pump maintenance. Remove the injection block, the fuel intake and outlet tubes, and the various pipes. Loosen the tightening bolt of the block for the fuel oil main pipe and remove the fuel injection pump from the engine. Turn the pump upside down and remove the snap ring. Remove the plunger guide. Plunger. Spring. Spring retainer. Control sleeve. Control rack. And the deflector. Loosen the retaining bolt and remove the delivery valve. Do not disassemble the delivery valve. Now remove the set screw for the plunger barrel and remove the barrel. Inspect the barrel, the plunger, and the deflector. Check for scratches or cavitation. Wash all of the disassembled parts and clean them off with compressed air. Now we'll begin reassembling the fuel oil injection pump. First, be sure to separate the parts from each pump without getting them mixed up with other parts. Treat the plunger and plunger barrel as a single unit at all times. Replace the plunger barrel O-rings and backup rings. When inserting the plunger barrel, apply grease to the O-rings and match the set screw hole with the plunger barrel alignment hole. Tighten the set screw. Grease the deflector O-ring and install it. Apply Molykote 1000 to the screw part and seat of the bolt, and tighten it evenly to the specified torque. Assemble the control rack and the control sleeve by meshing the teeth so that each recessed part matches. Then move the rack to see if it moves smoothly, stroking it from 0 notch to full notch. Then confirm the 0 point. Confirm the height of the fuel injection pump against the baseline. The height of the assembly can be adjusted via the push rods inside the fuel injection pump tappets. Next, we'll look at the maintenance procedures for the piston and connecting rods. Prepare and lay out the tools necessary for disassembly as shown. Cover the piston with a rag and use sandpaper to remove carbon on the inside and the top surface of the protect ring and cylinder liner. Use a tap to remove the carbon from piston hanger screw holes. Remove the protector ring with the special tool. It can be removed easily if oil is squirted around the outside. Remove the locking wire from the connecting bolts. Move the piston to bottom dead center. Remove the connecting bolts. Next, screw the piston lifting tool to the screw hole on top of the piston and remove the piston. When removing only the piston, there's no need to disconnect the big end of the connecting rod. After removing, cover the cylinder liner so that no foreign objects enter the engine. Gently lift the connecting rod and remove the snap ring on one side. Then remove the piston pin. Inspect the piston for carbon buildup and scratches, and examine the piston ring movement. Remove carbon buildup on the combustion surface with sandpaper, but don't use sandpaper on any part of the piston body below the oil ring groove. Next, perform a color check on the combustion surface of the piston and the inside of the piston to see whether there are any cracks. Measure the following: the outer diameter of the piston, the piston pin boss, the small end bush of the connecting rod, and the piston pin. Prepare the cylinder liner. Set the liner gauge at the specified location to measure wear. Measure the cylinder liner. Set the liner gauge at the specified location. Next, disassemble the big end bore of the connecting rod. Turn the crankshaft until the big end bore is at the housing inspection window and remove the pull nut. Attach the jack stand and the hydraulic jack. Tighten the hydraulic jack until it's completely seated, then back the jack off one turn. Raise the hydraulic pressure to the specified pressure. Now loosen the rod nut. Next, open the pump relief valve and gradually lower the hydraulic pressure. Remove the hydraulic jack and turn the big end bore sideways. Turn it until it reaches the guide plate. Support the big end bore on both sides and carefully separate both sides to avoid damaging the crankshaft. Clean the crank pin bearing shell thoroughly and inspect the back surface and the joint surface of the bearing shell for fretting, traces of burning, or debris. Check for damage or fretting on the serrated teeth and rod part. Perform a color check on the serrated teeth to see whether there are any cracks. Check for dents or burrs on the nut seating area and the threads and bolt seat of the crank pin bolt. Now check the inner diameter of the big end bore. Confirm that the crank pin bolts that are fitted into the upper housing are tightened to the specified torque. Without fitting the bearing shells, assemble the big end bore and fit nuts only after making sure that the telly marks and knock pins match perfectly. Tighten the big end bore to the specified pressure and measure the big end bore diameter. Now, an explanation of the assembly procedure of the connecting rod big end bore. Clean off any foreign matter from the housing and the bearing back. Match the claws and assemble the bearing shells. At this time, do not apply grease or oil to the back of the shells. Wipe the crankshaft clean and apply lubricating oil to the surface of the bearing shells. Check the location of the identification mark, round embossed seat, and knock pin. Face the round embossed seat toward the front of the engine and assemble the metal cap halves from both sides without scratching the crankshaft. The bolts and nuts are punched with numbers, so be careful not to misplace bolts when reassembling. Attach the nuts and fasten them. Tighten the nuts to the specified pressure in the same order as when disassembling. When they're seated, secure them by tapping the jack handle with a hammer. Then attach the pull nut. Check if the big end bore turns easily on the crankshaft. Now let's assemble the piston and connecting rods. Clean and air blow each part before assembling the pistons. For the rings, use all new rings and put them onto the piston with the manufacturing mark facing up. When assembling the oil ring and coil spring, place the coil spring joint on the opposite side of the oil ring butt. Assemble as shown in the diagram to ensure that the rings are put in the right order. Measure and record the clearance between the ring and the ring groove with a thickness gauge. When assembling the piston and connecting rod, match the F mark on the piston combustion surface to the round embossed seat on the rod part of the connecting rod. Apply lubricating oil on the piston pin and fit the piston pin into the piston. Then fit the snap rings into the groove. Check the side clearance between the piston and the small end of the connecting rod. Place the piston insert ring on the top of the cylinder liner. Apply lubricating oil to the piston insertion ring, cylinder liner, piston ring, and piston skirt. Adjust the piston ring gaps to 90-degree intervals. Place the crank pin at bottom dead center. Then slowly insert the piston into the cylinder liner, lowering it slowly while matching the bottom of the rod part with the big end. Finally, match the knock pin. Place the protect ring so that the identification mark can be seen from the top. Spray Molykote 1000 on the threads and seat of the connecting bolt. The connecting rod part has A and B punch marks. Using a torque wrench, tighten to the A mark. Tighten in the order 1, 4, 2, 3, 1. Further tightening to the B mark is also done in this order. 1, 4, 2, 3, 1. Check the axial movement of the connecting rod big end bore. Now, the main bearing shell maintenance procedure. Prepare the necessary tools for disassembly. Next, remove the side bolt cap and attach the hydraulic jacks to the side bolts. Raise the pressure to both jacks simultaneously to the specified pressure. Loosen the nuts. Open the relief valve of the pump and release the pressure slowly. Remove the hydraulic jacks and the nuts. Do not remove the side bolts until after the hydraulic ram is set. There are two types of main bearing removal tools. Attach the hydraulic jacks onto the hydraulic ram. Raise the hydraulic ram until the jacks reach the main bearing bolts. Screw the jacks into the main bearing bolts. Apply the specified pressure and loosen the nuts. Open the pump's release valve and gradually lower the pressure. Loosen the nut and attach the main bearing cap tool. Now remove the side bolts. Move the hydraulic pump lever downward to the lower main bearing cap slowly until it stops. When using the hydraulic rams, do not exceed the maximum allowable pressure. Remove the lower main bearing shell from the cap carefully, making sure not to scratch it. Insert the main bearing shell removing pin into the crank pin oil hole. Be careful not to let the tool slip out of the hole. Turn the crankshaft slowly until the pin touches the upper bearing shell. Then turn the crankshaft forward 180 degrees. Remove the upper bearing shell. Inspect the back surfaces of the upper and lower bearing shells for fretting and the inner surfaces for scratches. Now let's reassemble the main bearing shell. The upper bearing shell has a lubrication groove in the center. After cleaning the surfaces of the bearing shells, apply lubricating oil and press the bearing shell with care. Make sure it's aligned with the housing. Fit the bearing removing pin and make sure it faces the shell's butt. Then turn the crankshaft until the bearing butt is aligned with the housing. Remove the pin when the bearing shell is properly aligned. Lower the main bearing cap and use bare hands to check for scratches or residue on the crankshaft journal or main bearing cap. Check the lower bearing shell, main bearing cap and position of the claw. Also, don't apply oil to the back of the bearing shell. Fit the lower shell into the cap and apply lubricating oil to the inside of the lower bearing shell with your bare hands. Raise the main bearing cap. Screw the side bolt in completely, then turn it back 1/2 turn. Next, set the hydraulic jacks. Raise the hydraulic pressure to the specified pressure. When the nut has contacted the surface, tighten it by tapping the jack handle with a hammer. Tighten the bolt the same way as the main bearing cap bolts. After completing the work, clean and inspect the crankcase, then run the lubricating oil priming pump. Check the lubrication conditions. Check if the crankshaft turns easily. After these operations are completed, inspect each part and check that there are no abnormalities and there are no dangerous materials in the area. Carry out a dry run. If no abnormalities are found, close the indicator valves, then start up the engine. After that, touch each part with your bare hands to make sure there are no abnormalities. After turning off the engine, remove the side covers and measure the temperature of the bearings. At the same time, touch them with your bare hands to make sure there are no abnormalities. This concludes the inspection and maintenance procedures. Be sure to perform these procedures referring to the maintenance manual. Also, take note of the following. Be aware of safety clothing. Correct understanding and pursuance of signals. Be tidy and neat. Keep working condition in good order. Keep control of tools. Keep measured data. Use genuine parts. Look for tally marks. Tighten to the specified tightening torque. Tighten to the specified hydraulic pressure. Keep the correct maintenance intervals. For your safety, warning labels and caution labels are posted on the machines. On the labels, there is important safety information. Read them thoroughly and use extreme caution while performing maintenance and operating procedures. Thank you for watching. After reading the maintenance manual thoroughly, be sure to conduct these maintenance and inspection procedures regularly to keep the engine running at top performance levels.